Ibogaine has become one of the most talked about potential new treatments for everything from PTSD and traumatic brain injuries to Parkinson's and opioid addiction. Interest in the psychedelic is growing rapidly. In fact, President Trump recently signed an executive order aimed at accelerating research into psychedelic therapies, including Ibogaine. This is Ibogaine Inside the Research. Thanks for joining us. I'm Catherine Garcia. In this special report, we're taking you inside an innovative study at UC Irvine that's looking inside the brain before and after Ibogaine treatment.
No one really knows how. They don't really know what's going on neurobiologically and how the Ibogaine is working to do that. And so that's the piece that our group is trying to add, is trying to understand how the Ibogaine might be working to break addictive circuitry.
We have multiple different scans that we do because we want to assess different parts of the brain.
Researchers at UC Irvine are trying to answer one of the biggest questions about Ibogaine, a psychedelic that is still illegal in the United States, but which is increasingly becoming a focus for scientists trying to unlock its potential healing power. In this lab at the Susan Samueli Integrative Health Institute, they're trying to get real data showing what's happening in the brain after people take Ibogaine, specifically to treat opioid use disorder.
Hi, Catherine.
I learned a lot about Ibogaine last year when I visited a clinic called Ambio in Mexico, where it is legal to administer Ibogaine. This is the treatment room at Ambio. This is where Ibogaine is given to the patients. It is a journey that can last 24 hours or longer. I also met a veteran who had struggled with traumatic brain injury and PTSD. He says Ibogaine treatments at Ambio saved his life.
Well, once I kind of got up the next day and had some sleep and rest, and I felt amazing. I felt like the weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I felt like I had no stress, no anxiety. I was just clear-headed. I had purpose.
Marcus Capone and other patients we met described profound changes after taking Ibogaine, but a critical question remained. What do we know about the science, about what is physically happening when somebody does an Ibogaine treatment?
We honestly don't know too much. We need to know more.
Are you ready to get started?
Yeah.
To answer that question, researchers at UC Irvine designed a first-of-its-kind study looking inside the brain before and after Ibogaine treatments.
We are looking at the reward pathway, which is mainly the basal ganglia, and that's this area here.
The research team put together this demonstration so we could see how the brain imaging process works. Professor Rick Harris is the neuroscientist leading the effort, working with volunteers they meet at Ambio, where they legally receive an Ibogaine treatment. So far, 6 patients have taken part.
So we have a study where we're imaging with functional magnetic resonance imaging as well as electroencephalogram imaging. We're looking at brain activity before individuals take Ibogaine and then after they've taken the Ibogaine. So we're recruiting individuals that have opioid use disorder. They're addicted to opioids. And we basically have them imaged with the scanners here at UC Irvine.
Basically, how this works is usually people with addiction, when they have cravings, right? If they see any stimulus that triggers or that reminds them of that substance, their reward system is active, right? It's like, oh, I want that. So anything that they see, they're like, oh, I want that. And that's usually how addiction works as well.
To find out whether an Ibogaine treatment changes that response in a patient's brain, neuroimaging analyst Apeksha Sridhar shows them 2 sets of images, some that are related to opioids and others that are nearly identical but without drugs.
So when they're looking at these images before Ibogaine, every time we have images of opioids or people using over here, and we have control images. So the control images are basically very similar in terms of like the number of people in the image, the colors of the image, to kind of make sure it's controlled for everything else. So the only difference is the opioids in the image. So we're controlling it so we can look at how their brain reacts to these images compared to these control images.
We're not done with our study yet, but it's encouraging. We're getting some signal that the opioid images are not having as much of an effect on the brain after Ibogaine.
One of the people who was volunteered for this innovative study is Brianne Townsend. She had never heard of Ibogaine when a friend suggested she visit Ambio.
At the time that I decided to go, I was living on the streets of Portland. I'd been living on the streets for about 6 years, doing meth, fentanyl, heroin, crack, and I just couldn't seem to get any sort of footing as far as as gaining any sort of stability or peace. I was just like spiraling into the depths of addiction, really. And I tried different detoxes. I tried methadone. I tried pretty much anything you can try, and I had essentially given up. And so when my trip first started, it was just black, and I just felt like I was standing there alone in this sort of void. And then a big eye appeared, and I asked it the questions like, okay, show me the truth no matter how uncomfortable, show me who I was before the pain. And it was like, it kind of gave me this like emotive look like, okay, I bet. And I was thrown into a sort of like monochrome rapid fractal kaleidoscope of like all my sensory experiences. So like all my trauma, every painful experience, every joy, everything I'd ever smelt, seen, experienced in general, just from all my in all my senses. And it was just like a kaleidoscope of all of those things. I was like rocketed out of that experience into this like cyclical space scene where I was seeing like the cycles of the earth and like death and life and how everything is based on balance and reciprocity, how things are like cycles of creation and destruction. And then I got to sort of zoom into like our planet, my life, my experience. And then I woke up in my body again.
So, very intense trip. And then how did you feel immediately afterward?
Like I was born all over again, but not in a poetic, beautiful way. Like I was experiencing what it was like to be almost like an infant. Like everything was too bright, time was going by too slow. All I could do was cry, and ask the nurses if they would sit with me. I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't sleep. I could barely walk.
What Brianne experienced was difficult, but ultimately transformative. Now, the UCI research team is looking for signs of that change inside the brain.
And what we think is happening is ibogaine rewires the system. It rewires the networks in the brain, and that's why the addiction is broken. So that's what we think might be happening, and we're hoping to see that with our data.
And so far, we've actually seen a drastic change where like before ibogaine, they go in, they see the images, and their cravings increase by a lot because they're seeing the images that is triggering their reward system. But after ibogaine, it stays so low. There's no change in cravings.
And the research doesn't end after one brain scan. Research coordinator Charlotte Linsky works with the participants through multiple check-ins, allowing the team to follow not just what happened inside the brain, but how recovery unfolds over time.
So we can do that baseline, post-treatment, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. So we're really getting a full holistic picture of the patient and how their experiences dealing with opioids and then also recovering from opioids. We're really wanting to see how it impacts each domain of their lives and be able to follow them on that journey.
While the researchers have documented Brianne's recovery, Brianne is busy rebuilding her life.
And after I did ibogaine, and I came back to my body, I just remember calling my mom and I was like, Mom, I'm me again. Like I can't even imagine what it would be like to want to do drugs again, you know?
Wow. And you're clean and sober ever since?
Yep.
Congratulations. That is huge.
Thank you. Yeah.
Success stories like Brianne's are exactly why the Etheridge Foundation has pledged $50,000 to fund the UC Irvine research. Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter Melissa Etheridge created the foundation after her own family's tragedy several years ago. Anna Simmons is the foundation's executive director.
Melissa started the foundation in the wake of the death of her son Beckett from opioid overdose in 2020. Beckett got a pretty bad injury in a snowboarding accident and broke his ankle in a couple of places and was prescribed painkillers. That was where everything started. And the way that Melissa describes it is the painkillers not only helped the physical pain, but they also numbed the pain of his broken dream around, his snowboarding dreams and ambitions. With everything that their family went through, trying to get him help and treatment that would be effective but not finding those resources. She really wanted to create access for other families to have more choices.
I think it says a lot that somebody who is successful and admired and in the public eye as Melissa, even she couldn't find the resources she needed for her son. That says a lot, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Catherine. That's the heartbreaking thing about the opioid crisis is it spares no one. It reaches across families, regardless of geography, regardless of economics and finances, of race, gender, any factors you can think of. It's hurting people, and we just need more tools and more resources for treatment. We like the study for several reasons. It is innovative in design. It's looking at something and measuring effects that haven't been measured before.
And while Professor Harris says the early results are very promising, he too hopes the research continues to expand.
So at the end of this study, I'm hoping that it will be easier for researchers to do more work with ibogaine because it's clearly in need of more investigation. In terms of like the psychedelics, for example, psilocybin has been studied a lot. There's a lot of research on psilocybin. Comparably with ibogaine, there's like maybe 5% as much in ibogaine. So there's a lot of work we have to still do.
While researchers continue studying the science of how ibogaine can work safely on the brain, Brianne is focused on something much simpler, getting her life back. What are your hopes and dreams for the future now that you're in a great place?
So right now, my partner and I are planning on moving back to Reno because during when I was in my addiction, I was homeless. My mom took my son in, and she's been raising him since. So we're trying to move back there so that I can be with him again. And then I'm pregnant, so just looking forward to being a present, healthy mom. It's not a cure-all, though. It's like sort of a catalyst into like it kind of skips you over all the hard parts and puts you in a place of balance. But it's your job to move forward and remain balanced and do the things that it takes to maintain that balance. You can't just do it. I believe that you can't just do it and then hope that it's gonna just save you, you know. You have to kind of put in the work to maintain that level of balance.
The research team at UC Irvine is continuing to recruit volunteers for this groundbreaking study, hoping each new participant brings them one step closer to understanding ibogaine's effect on the brain. You can learn more about that research and about the Etheridge Foundation's work in this field at NBC7.com. Thanks for joining us for ibogaine Inside the Research.